Have you ever wondered why your MPG suddenly drops, even though nothing is wrong with your engine, no warning lights appear, and your dealership insists everything is normal? What if I told you that the real reason your fuel economy tanks isn't your driving style, your tires, or even your engine, but 5 tiny electronic sensors quietly drifting out of spec? Sensors that dealerships rarely check, mechanics almost never clean, and most drivers don't even know exist, despite the fact that they can cause 10 to 40% MPG loss without triggering a single check engine light. Modern engines rely on a network of airflow, temperature, and exhaust monitoring sensors to calculate fuel delivery. When even one becomes dirty, slow, or inaccurate, your engine secretly runs rich, burning far more fuel than necessary. And when all 5 start drifting on a high-mileage car, you're practically pouring fuel onto the pavement. Today, I'm exposing the 5 hidden sensors quietly destroying your MPG, especially on high-mileage vehicles like F-150s, Silverados, Rams, Malibus, Civics, Camrys, and older GM trucks. Fixing these can save you hundreds per year, prevent catalytic converter failure, and instantly restore power. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this video will save you money every time you drive. Now, let's expose the worst offender. Sensor number 1, dirty MAF, mass airflow sensor. Most people think MAF sensors are maintenance-free components that never need attention. You've probably been told that if your MAF sensor was actually bad, you'd get a check engine light and a diagnostic code. Here's the thing, many OEM service manuals don't even list MAF cleaning as a recommended service, creating a dangerous misconception that's costing you money every single day. But here's the dirty secret. The MAF hot wire becomes coated with oil vapor, dust, and fuel residue over time. Even a thin film on that sensing element causes wildly incorrect airflow readings, and your PCM responds by dumping more fuel into the engine. Your computer relies heavily on MAF data for fuel calculations, especially at cruising speed where you should be getting your best mileage. Our research and real-world testing shows that dirty MAF sensors can cause 10 to 20% overfueling without any warning whatsoever. Real owners on forums like F-150 Forum and GM Trucks report immediate gains of 6 MPG after a single cleaning. According to Delphi's technical documentation, incorrect MAF data directly causes improper fuel trim conditions. Many vehicles show absolutely no check engine light even with major MAF drift, because the readings are still within the acceptable range even though they're wrong. The simple fix is to use MAF-specific cleaner like CRC MAF sensor cleaner, and this is critical. Never use brake cleaner, carburetor cleaner, or any other solvent. Clean your MAF every 10,000 to 20,000 miles on high-mileage engines. If your readings still drift after cleaning, replace it with an OE sensor from Denso, Delphi, or Hitachi. Avoid cheap aftermarket sensors that cause more problems than they solve. This creates an immediate MPG jump that you'll notice at your very next fill-up. You'll restore proper air-fuel ratio, reduce the overload on your catalytic converter, and prevent long-term damage. We're talking about a $12 bottle of cleaner versus losing 6 MPG, which translates to $200 to $400 wasted per year on fuel alone. This issue hits Honda Civics, Toyota Camrys and Corollas, Ford F-150s with the 5.4 Triton, Chevrolet Malibus, Silverados with the 5.3, and Nissan Altimas particularly hard. If a dirty MAF surprised you, the next sensor is even worse because it destroys MPG even when it looks perfectly healthy, and mechanics almost never check it until it's too late. Sensor number 2. Failing Upstream O2. Sensor Your Owner's Manual says to replace oxygen sensors only when the check engine light comes on, and most mechanics will tell you the same thing. You've probably been told that O2 sensors either work or they don't. There's no in-between. The problem is, this advice is costing you a fortune. The truth is, O2 sensors drift gradually over tens of thousands of miles, becoming slow or voltage biased long before they completely fail. When this happens, your PCM reads the air-fuel mixture as too rich or too lean incorrectly, so it compensates by adding even more fuel. Your upstream oxygen sensors, the ones before the catalytic converter, determine nearly all of your closed-loop fueling calculations. When they go bad, your fuel economy goes with them. According to the Department of Energy and EPA testing, a bad oxygen sensor can reduce your MPG by up to 40%. Bosch, one of the largest O2 sensor manufacturers in the world, states that worn oxygen sensors cause 10 to 15% more fuel consumption on average. Here's the kicker. Slow O2 switching response often does not trigger a diagnostic code, Because the sensor is still technically functioning. It's just giving your computer bad information. One F-150 owner documented a drop from 17 MPG to 11 MPG, then back to 18 MPG after replacing both upstream sensors. That's a $50 part saving over $600 per year. Instead, you should replace your upstream oxygen sensors every 80,000 to 120,000 miles as preventive maintenance, not waiting for failure. Use OE brands like Denso part number 234-4668, NTK, NGK, or Bosch. Stay away from no-name brands. And here's what the pros actually do. They watch long-term fuel trim. If your LTFT is consistently over positive 10%, you likely have O2 sensor drift happening right now. This creates immediate MPG recovery that pays for the sensor within weeks. You'll reduce carbon buildup throughout your intake and exhaust, protect your catalytic converter from overheating, and stabilize your long-term fuel trim. We're talking about a $40 to $80 sensor preventing $300 to $600 per year in wasted fuel and stopping a $900 to $2,000 catalytic converter replacement down the road. This affects Toyota 4Runners, Chevy Silverados with the 5.3, Honda Accords, Ford Explorers, and Ram 1500s constantly. But even if your O2 sensor is perfect and reading accurately, your engine may still be calculating the wrong load because of what we're covering next. And if you thought fuel trim was important, wait until you see this. Sensor number 3, MAP, Manifold Absolute Pressure. Sensor. Most people think the MAP sensor barely affects fuel economy, or that only turbocharged cars really need a functioning MAP sensor. Mechanics will often dismiss MAP sensor issues because the car still runs. Bottom line, they're wrong, and you're paying for their ignorance. What they don't tell you is that even MAF-based engines use the MAP sensor for cross-checking load calculations. A leaking MAP vacuum line means incorrect load readings, which means your PCM dumps in excessive fuel. And on speed-density engines, which use MAP as the primary input instead of MAF, a bad MAP sensor completely destroys your fuel economy because the computer has no idea how much air is actually entering the engine. According to diagnostic data from shops across the country, faulty MAP sensors routinely cause persistent rich fuel trim of 10% or more without triggering codes. Vacuum leaks at the MAP sensor alter readings dramatically because the sensor is reading atmospheric pressure instead of manifold vacuum. This forces fuel trim corrections that the PCM can't fully compensate for. The result? Your engine runs rich, your catalytic converter overheats, and you burn through gas like you're driving a tank. Here's what you need to do. Smoke test all vacuum lines connected to your intake manifold and MAP sensor. Clean the MAP sensor port with carburetor cleaner and replace the sensor if your scan tool shows unstable or illogical data. Make sure your PCV system and intake manifold gaskets aren't leaking. Use OE replacement sensors, not cheap parts store alternatives that fail within months. This simple habit restores correct fuel mixture calculations immediately. You'll prevent catalytic converter overheating and premature failure, improve throttle response, and stabilize your idle quality. A $30 to $60 sensor saves you $150 to $400 per year in wasted fuel and prevents multi-thousand-dollar emission system failures that will leave you stranded. Dodge Rams are notorious for MAP failures, along with GM 4.3 and 5.7 Vortec engines, Ford Triton 4.6 and 5.4 motors, Chevy Trailblazers with the inline 6, and Jeep 4.0-liter engines. If you're finding this information valuable, hit that like button to help other car owners discover these truths. But even with the right load calculation, your engine might think the air is hotter or colder than it actually is, and that destroys MPG in ways you'd never expect. Sensor number 4, IAT, intake air temperature. Sensor. You've probably never thought twice about your intake air temperature sensor. Most people assume IAT readings don't really matter, or that a stuck IAT sensor won't affect fuel economy. After all, it's measuring air temperature. How much could that possibly impact your gas mileage? But here's the dirty secret. Your IAT sensor determines air density, which directly controls fuel injector pulse width. Heat-soaked IAT sensors, especially on turbocharged engines or vehicles with poor sensor placement, can read 40 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the actual incoming air temperature. When your computer thinks the air is hot and less dense, it adds more fuel to compensate. The result? A 5 to 15% rich mixture at cruising speed where you should be getting maximum efficiency. The science is clear. Air density changes significantly with temperature. Cold air at 40 degrees is approximately 10% more dense than air at 100 degrees. Multiple studies confirm that intake air temperature affects fuel consumption directly because the PCM must adjust fueling based on oxygen content per volume of air. IAT sensors commonly read wrong on high-mileage vehicles due to heat soak, oil contamination, or internal resistance drift. One Civic owner relocated his IAT sensor away from the exhaust manifold and immediately gained 4 MPG. The fix is straightforward. Compare your IAT reading to outside temperature on a cold start using a scan tool. They should match within 5 degrees. If your IAT sensor is mounted near heat sources like the exhaust manifold or turbocharger, relocate it to a cooler spot in the intake tract. Replace the sensor if readings are inconsistent, stuck, or obviously wrong. You'll stabilize fuel trims across all operating conditions, improve MPG, and restore smooth throttle response. This prevents spark plug fouling from overly rich mixtures and extends the life of your oxygen sensors and catalytic converter. A $20 to $30 sensor saves you hundreds yearly and prevents damage that cascades through your entire fuel and emission system. This hits Dodge Neons and Stratuses, Honda Civics with aftermarket cold air intakes, GM trucks with heat soak issues, and Toyota Camrys and Corollas particularly hard. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more money saving. Automotive insights. But even if your air temperature is correct, the most damaging sensor mistake is still ahead. Because when this final sensor fails, your engine stays in warm-up mode forever, burning double the fuel it should. Sensor number 5, ECT engine coolant temperature. Sensor. Your owner's manual shows you the temperature gauge on your dashboard, and as long as it's in the middle, you assume everything is fine. Most people think that if their temp gauge is normal, the coolant temperature sensor must be working correctly. You've probably been told that you'll get a check engine light if the ECT sensor goes bad. Here's the problem. That's dangerously wrong. What they don't tell you is that many temperature gauges are buffered, meaning they show you a fake normal reading even when the actual coolant temperature varies significantly. If your ECT sensor reads colder than the actual coolant temperature, your PCM holds the engine in rich warm-up mode indefinitely. This warm-up enrichment can literally double your fuel consumption compared to normal closed-loop operation. Your computer thinks the engine is still cold, so it keeps dumping fuel in like you're starting up on a freezing winter morning. Except this happens all day, every day. According to mechanics and diagnostic specialists, a cold-biased ECT sensor causes permanent enrichment that can drop fuel economy by 30 to 50% or more. One Silverado owner tracked his fuel economy from 13 MPG back to 19 MPG after replacing a failed ECT sensor that wasn't throwing any codes. Professional technicians note that fuel economy drops like a rock with bad ECT sensors, yet these failures often do not trigger diagnostic trouble codes because the readings fall within acceptable parameters. They're just wrong enough to destroy your mileage. Here's what the pros actually do. Use a scan tool to compare ECT versus IAT readings on a cold start. They should match within a few degrees because both are reading ambient temperature. Replace your thermostat if your engine never reaches proper operating temperature of 185 to 195 degrees Fahrenheit. Replace your ECT sensor if the reading is unstable, stuck, or doesn't match reality. Use OE sensors only. Cheap aftermarket ECT sensors are notorious for incorrect resistance curves. This eliminates rich warm-up mode immediately, restores proper closed-loop operation, and prevents cylinder washdown from excessive fuel that damages your rings and bearings. We're talking about a $30 sensor plus a $25 thermostat preventing $300 to $600 per year in wasted fuel, $900 to $2,000 in catalytic converter failure, and $150 to $400 in spark plug and ignition coil damage from fouling. This destroys fuel economy on GM 3800 V6 engines, Ford 4.6 and 5.4 Triton motors, Toyota 2.4 and 3.0 engines, older Honda Accords and Civics, and Chevy Cavaliers and Malibus constantly. And that wraps up the 5 MPG killing sensors. But fixing them is only the beginning of restoring your fuel efficiency and taking back control from dealerships that profit from your ignorance. Your engine's fuel economy doesn't decline because it's old. It declines because the sensors it depends on slowly drift, contaminate, or fail without warning. By cleaning your MAF sensor, replacing aging oxygen sensors, checking your MAP and IAT readings, and making sure your ECT is accurate, you can restore fuel economy instantly, prevent thousands in long-term engine damage, and keep your high-mileage vehicle running like new. Dealerships rarely mention these issues because they're inexpensive fixes that save you money, not them. They'd rather sell you a new car than help you maintain the one you have. Take control of your MPG today. Hit like if you found this breakdown useful and subscribe to the channel now. I'll continue to guide you through the real facts of car maintenance, saving you thousands. Drop a comment telling me which sensor you're checking first. See you there. Drive smart, save money, and keep your engine healthy.